Now, welcome everyone. I'll just say a few words in Dutch and then I'm going to switch to English and stay that way. Nou, welkom iedereen die erbij is. Ik heb hier heel veel zin in. We gaan het webinar in het Engels doen, maar dat was jullie allemaal wel bekend. De sprekers spreken ook allemaal Engels. En nou, schakel ik nu over. So, everyone, a warm welcome. This is our first day in the week of care farming here in the Netherlands. We have a whole week of webinars and a conference on Friday. And tonight we're doing something that I think is very interesting. Care farming has become very much a worldwide development, and we from the Federation actually are in touch with people from all over the world. And other countries want to learn from us, we learn from them. And I remember, quite a while back, maybe 10 years ago, it was quite common for care farmers from other countries to come over and to learn from each other. And sometimes you couldn't learn from each other at all, but sometimes there was just these little bits of inspiration. And I thought it would be a great opportunity now to bring some countries back together and provide a little bit of an insight. There are people from 4 different countries, or actually, I think there's people from 6 different countries, but we have people speaking from 4 different countries. And we will have a program where we hear from 2 European exchange projects, and then later we will hear from 4 different countries. We welcome questions at any time. I may not be able to answer all questions, but we will monitor the questions all the time and bring them in whenever we can. We are recording. If you don't want to be recorded, you can turn off your camera, and that's fine. And yeah, and if you want to say something, I will usually invite you to say something. Otherwise, we will constantly mute everyone to make sure that we can hear the speakers well. And I think that's everything for now. I want to welcome all the speakers, which I will introduce one by one. And again, if you have questions, just type them in the chat and we will see. So yeah, I think without further ado, I will ask Tineke. Tineke has been a care farmer for many years and has been involved with an exchange project that she can say much more about than I can. And so Tineke, go ahead. I think Crystal will put your slides up, and if you can unmute yourself, you can take the floor.
Yes, okay. Yeah, she put my camera off, so I thought, where am I staying? But here I am. Good evening. Thank you for inviting me at this webinar. It's a bit awkward for me to speak in English to mostly Dutch people. But since we want our foreign guests to understand us, I'm delighted to do so. I will put some Dutch words now and then between my stone cold English. I have run the care farm for 15 years in Drenthe, which is in the north of the Netherlands, with elderly care, elderly daycare, youth care, and residential care. Right now, I work for several corporations of care farmers in the Netherlands and as an educational developer or course coordinator. One of these corporations is Bezin. Bezin stands for Boer en Zorg in Noord-Nederland, farmers and care in the north of the Netherlands. Bezin is the Dutch partner in the Social Farms Erasmus project. Crystal, can you start sharing the screen? Yes. The Social Farm Erasmus project is a collaboration project together with experts on social agriculture from Spain, Italy, Turkey, Austria, and the Netherlands. Slide 2, please. Crystal. Thank you. Together with Anouk Hafkamp, who also works for FLZ, our Dutch Federation of Care Farming, I have participated in this project. Erasmus projects are European Union funds for knowledge exchange between European countries. And that's what we did the past 2 years, exchanging knowledge on social farming within these 5 countries. In this project, we have made 3 courses about social farming together. In the Netherlands, we usually speak about care farming. The 3 courses are named like this on slide 3. That's 4, yeah. Social Farm Tutor, which we translate into begeleider. In English, you can also use the word attendant or mentor. The social farm manager needs no translation, and the social health educator, which I have translated into zorgcoördinator. Sometimes this role is also called case manager, and in the Netherlands, this role is partly also done by gedragswetenschappers, behavioral scientists. As you might notice, the challenge on translating just the titles of the courses, you can imagine what a challenge it was to have the content together with these 5 countries with all their different perspectives on and actualities on social farming. Right now, I show you the course content, slide 4. So these 3 courses try to give you insight in what these 3 roles in care farming should know, should organize and do. Their competences, knowledge, skills, and professional attitude. For more insight on the course's content, see the project website, which is slide 5. Dutch listeners might be wondered about the separation of these 3 roles, since small-scale care farmers perform all these roles. I did not choose this mapping. In some of the participating countries, it works that way. On the other hand, it shows again what a wide variety of skills care farming needs. I think almost everything is uploaded on the project website already in the 5 mentioned languages and also in English, of course. We are almost at the finish of the project. Last month, groups from every country did the so-called pilot testing on the course content. So they reviewed every course. That gave us valuable feedback for improvements. Beside these courses, you will find 13 case studies on the website. That's slide 6, yeah. Which are short leaflets, presentations on care farms in those 5 countries. It's very interesting to have a look at. You see differences and similarities between the farms in the 5 participating countries. From Netherlands, the case study shows the care farm of Anouk Hafkamp and also the famous Norberhoeve in Echten. For me, this project was eye-opening about the differences on care farming between the participating countries. In some countries, the focus within care farms is very much on job inclusion. Care farms are only existing in active producing farms. The clients participate in the different sorts of production environments. In the Dutch situation, it can be compared with the sociale werkplaatsen. In other countries and farms, the focus is very much on individual therapy. Care farmers are there always employees of health institutions where professional degrees on social health services are required, and where therapists are working at the care farm. The legislations and way of financing of the care farms determine the differences as well. Something that was very inspiring for me personal on this project is the rehabilitation methodology. That's slide 7, yeah. That's hugely implemented in Italy at the social farms. In Dutch, we have the so-called rehabilitatiemethodiek, which has a lot of similarities. It's a method that's developed in the psychiatric field, and it's also used a lot in probation and addiction counseling centers, reclassering en verslavingszorg. It's been used worldwide and it's evidence-based. It gives you tools to work on supporting people with disabilities in their own participation goals. The philosophy of rehabilitation is very similar to the current participation, reintegration, and inclusion objectives in the Netherlands, but this methodology is still little applied within our care farms. The method is explained in the content of course number 3. I show it on slide 8. Thank you. I hope everyone can read it. I would invite Dutch and other care farmers to take note on this and consider the working elements and tools for your daily care. For more information, see the website on the slides. The project also gave me valuable input for a Dutch introduction course for care farmers, which is now active at Bezin, and from next week, active at the learning platform of FLZ. People in other countries often look amazed and impressed at the Dutch care farming sector, where we often don't focus on therapy, where people stay who cannot do any work, and where people can live lifelong. Onze kleinschalige jeugd, ouderen en langdurige zorg, youth care, elderly care, and residential care at farms. While we Dutch are very good at complaining about what is not good in our country and about the challenges on care farming on a daily basis, taking a look abroad helped me to be more grateful and a bit more humble on the high level of care in our rich country. Dutch care farms want to rely on their own core values, de kernwaarden van zorglandbouw. Together, outside and normal, samen, buiten en gewoon. These values are what makes us unique and different from regular care institutions. Fortunately, these core values were recognized everywhere in the participating countries on social farms. And I hope it will be recognized in social farms worldwide and let them help us to take social farming more and more serious. Until so far from me in this webinar, thank you for listening.
Well, Tineke is an educator and she's recorded many e-learning clips, and I can see because you've stayed exactly within your 10 minutes. That's impressive. Yes. I realized I didn't really introduce which countries are on the line now. I know there's people from Korea, Canada, Norway, Ireland, England, Austria, and the Netherlands, obviously. And so, yeah, so that's pretty neat to have them all on board. If anyone has any questions for Tineke, feel free. As she said, most of the content has been applied in an introduction course in the Netherlands, and then we have everything accessible via the website that she showed. I think we can probably provide that link with an email after this webinar for people to find again. So if there's no other questions, I will just ask Marjolein to take over and give us a broader overview of care farming in Europe.
Thank you, Maarten. I will try to share my screen. See. Is it visible?
Perfect.
Great. Okay. Let me see if I can switch between. Yeah, Okay, so Maarten, first of all, thank you for your introduction, and also thanks for having me tonight.
I forgot to introduce you.
Oh, okay,
Marjolein has been a researcher in care farming for a very, very long time. If you've read research, it's usually either from Simone, Marjolein, or Jan Hassing, and all three of them are on this call, I think. So
yeah, I saw Simone already,
yeah.
and probably Jan is there too. So thanks, Maarten. What I will do tonight is give you an overview of the development of social farming across Europe in 20 minutes. And actually, I could not give this information without many input of my foreign colleagues. And I did see some foreign colleagues there, like Brian Smith and Aisling Monterey. So it's really nice to see you there. And therefore, I would like to introduce first two projects in which we work together and bringing this information together. And now my computer is not responding. You don't see a new slide, I think.
No.
Ah, that's a pity. Ah, wait. Now you do, I think.
Yes.
Great. So the first project is a SOFAR team project in which I work together with colleagues from Germany, Ireland, Czech Republic on the development of training materials for future social farmers. And specifically on how the farm environment can be best used for specific target groups. And we did that. We did this by doing more than 40 interviews and multiple days of participatory observations in each partner countries at different farms. And this will lead to teaching materials for university and also organizations like the Federation of Care Farmers in the Netherlands. And actually, next week we will test the training material we developed at the University of Neubrandenburg. And this training material will be available next year on the webpage of www.sofaredu.eu. And well, I think it's if I look at the preview of the chapters, I think it specifically gives a very nice overview of what or how you can use the farm environment for specific target groups. So I will keep you updated. And then the other project, and that is the Green for C project. And Green for C stands for Green for Care. And that's all about activities related to green care, and that in the 4 thematic sectors, and that are forest-based care. You can think of forest bathing, for instance. Social agriculture, well, we're here for that tonight. Green care tourism, for instance, by using green for the tourism sector, and urban green care, and you can think of urban farming. And the purpose of the Green for C project is to contribute to the development of green care entrepreneurial opportunities for students, researchers, professionals, as well as practitioners to promote nature-based solutions for health, well-being, and social inclusion. And that's a very long sentence, but the aim is to look for or creating opportunities for social entrepreneurs to use nature or agriculture for the benefit of people. And in this project, we had also a market outlook, and we looked at the developments of the social farming sector in Europe and also at the future prospects of the social farming sector in Europe. And in the next couple of slides, I would like to give a kind of summary of that report. And with that, I give an overview of the development of this sector in Europe. And if you like to read this report more in detail, you could, of course, go to the website of the Green for C project. So if we look at the perspective or the broader European perspective, what we see is that the social agricultural sector is a fast-growing sector in Europe, and that we see different developments and systems in different countries. But we all have in common that it is an innovative sector. So it combines healthcare, education, and social services with agricultural production. And we see actually in almost all countries that the social farming concept is built on a more inclusive agricultural sector, and that in some countries it's also linked to more sustainable production systems such as organic farming, or in some countries it's also ties in with developments in healthcare. And as an example, I can give, for instance, the Netherlands, in which we, if we look back in history, see that in the late 90s, that both ministries of agriculture and healthcare had a change in policy and wanted to be more inclusive, like agriculture should be more connected with society and care of people with a disability should be more in society. And at that moment, both ministries saw that the pioneer care farmers at that moment fitted very well in that change of policy. And then some numbers. We also looked at different countries, and what are the numbers and how many farms there are and how many participants are coming to the farm. And as you can see, there are two kind of columns, and the first one is the social farms that are represented by main national or regional or associations, like for instance the Dutch Federation of Care Farms. And we see that in the Netherlands the number is like now around, at the moment now, like around 1,300. And what is interesting to see is that in mostly all countries that we studied, we see that most of the social farms are related to one of the national regional associations of care farmers, but not in Italy actually, because there you see quite a difference, and that the Italian situation is kind of differently organized, and I will come back to that later. And the numbers also show that in most countries we see a growth in the sector, and that is shown by the number of participants coming to the social farm. For instance, in the Netherlands it's 35,000 per year, in Italy it's 15,000, and in Flanders more than 2,000 participants. We also see a growth in revenues. For the Dutch situation, because if you look at the data in the Netherlands, the most data is available, and we see that the revenues of the joint regional social agricultural organizations have increased from 11.3 million euros in 2011 till 88.6 million euros in 2018. And at the moment, it's estimated with also the social farms that are not a member of the regional organizations to be around 250 million euros. So on average, like 200,000 euros per year per social farm. So we can conclude that in many countries we see a growth in the sector, but that especially from a lot of countries data is missing, and that's a pity actually. And then we looked at how the social farming sector is actually organized. So we see that there are different ways how the sector is organized in every national country, and this is also to a large extent framed within a kind of discourse or framework, so to say. And in our report we talk about 3 frameworks or discourses, and that is the framework of multifunctional agriculture, public health, and social inclusion. And if we look more closely to the framework of multifunctional agriculture, we see that social farming is actually one of the multifunctional activities of a farm, and that it takes often place on a private or family farm, and that it is a combination of commercial farming activities and care activities, and that it is also often an economic activity. And at those social farms, the farmer or the farmer's wife are the supervisors, and they are also paid for their care activities. And that in most cases, the farmers are not a healthcare professional. And examples of countries that are that are in this framework is Ireland, Flanders, and the Netherlands. If we look at the public health framework, we see that the characteristics of this framework is that social farming refers to activities that fall under health promotion, rehabilitation, and therapy, and that the focus is on care services. It can be either private farm or institutional farms, for instance, a hospital garden, and farmers provide mostly the green environment. And the green environment is then seen as a therapeutic environment for people with special needs. Most often the farmer has no role in supervision, and professionals interacting with the participants are most of the time health professionals or work supervisors. And those professionals are formally employed and receive wages. And sometimes farmers might receive payments for providing the farm setting. And examples of countries that are in this kind of framework are Germany, Austria, and partly the UK. It depends on which, depends which farm it concerns. But if you look, for instance, at the Germany situation, there you have the Grüne Werkstätte, and that are often kind of small care institutions that have at least 50 clients, because that's kind of published from the policy rules and legislations there. So that's the reason why it falls in that framework, because it's more a kind of healthcare institution. And then the last framework, that of social inclusion, and that has the characteristics that social farming contributes to reintegration of vulnerable people in society by offering activities on the farm. And the focus is on social inclusion. Mostly they are private farm or cooperatives or institutional farms. The supervision takes place by the farmer or by the social services, and participants are paid, and sometimes the farmer. And I think also Tineke mentioned the situation of Italy, and I think Italy is the country that suits into the social inclusion framework, because they often have the so-called social cooperatives. And well, you see that also, maybe going back, you see also a kind of change in framework. So we see in the Netherlands, for instance, that from origin, we started more in a multifunctional agricultural discourse or framework, and that at the moment we also shift a bit more towards the public health discourse. And in Ireland, you see the other way around. So former days, the care funds were more public health oriented, while nowadays they're more in the multifunctional agriculture discourse. And if we look at the funding, because that's also an interesting point in which the countries do differ, we see also that this is based on the different welfare models. For instance, if we look at the Dutch situation, we see that the number of social farms increased rapidly because of innovations in financial structure of the healthcare sector. For instance, we had in 2003 the introduction of the personal budgets, and then in 2005 the neoliberal reforms of healthcare sector that gave the social farmers the opportunity to have their own accreditation and have direct contracts with the municipalities. And to see the growth, you see that in 1998 there were 75 social farms in the Netherlands, and nowadays there are 1,300. So you see that at some points there were there was a large increase of the numbers. If we look at the Italian situation, we see that funding in Italy comes mainly from from the European Agricultural Fund for Rural Development, but there's actually no data available on the specific amount. It's quite scattered in Italy, and what we know is that social farming activities are often not reimbursed by public healthcare systems, but that participants are paid, for instance, by social services, having a job rehabilitation, for instance, and that the participants are paid, but most of the time the farmers are not paid. And if we look at Flanders, we see that in 2017, there also was a personal budget scheme introduced, but that still most of the farmers receive a compensation of the Flemish Department of Agriculture and Fishery for offering social farming activities. And that's actually a fixed amount of money per day, irrespective of the number of participants taken onto their farms. And that's also interesting, actually, because that also kind of gives an idea of the policy of social farming in Flanders, because with this funding, they also give a kind of incentive for farmers to stay small in the in their social farming activities, because it doesn't it doesn't increase their income if they take more participants on their farm. We also took a look at the quality assurance and certification. And also in this, there are differences between countries. If we look at the Netherlands, we have, of course, quite a history with the Federation of Care Farms that had a quality system since 2000. And also the quality mark, which you can see on the top right. And in which if farmers apply to specific laws and regulations, can get the quality mark with an audit every 3 years. In Flanders, we see that the quality is guaranteed by a cooperation between the social farmer and a care or welfare organization. So that kind of gives a kind of supervision of the care or welfare organization to see if everything is going fine. And then if we look at the Italian situation, we see that there's no national level national level quality label, but we do see that some regions developed a regional law and regulations that allow farms to apply to be officially registered as a social cooperative or social farm. And if you are registered as a social farmer, you are kind of more visible to public organizations. So then you receive, for instance, preferential treatment when accessing local markets or school and hospital canteens. So in that way, you kind of benefit from being a social farm. Well, I would like to end this presentation also with some food for thought. Because what we did in the Market Outlook report, we also had interviews and a focus group with experts in the field. And we talked about what should be the future direction of the social farming sector. And from that question, it came out that if we look back in former days, we see that the social farming sector was actually focused on activities for people with disabilities or mental health issues, but that recently there is an increase of demand from other groups, like for instance, elderly, school drops out, refugees, and school children. And with this change of demand, also there's also a need of different types of social entrepreneurs and business models. And as an example, I could, for instance, give the example of the educational care farms in the Netherlands. There are now more than 50 farms that are specifically focused on giving education on farms for school children. And that also demands something different from the social farmer or the social entrepreneur. For instance, maybe a diploma in education or in pedagogy. So this could be a future direction, but the experts also stressed out that the unique role of and contact with the ordinary farmer and their family is very important, so that this kind of unique selling point of the social farm should still be available. But what the good point is of this diversification in terms of possibilities is that if you have more participants or participant profiles that can come to the social farm, this allows also for more sources of funding. Another point that was raised was visibility. That's of course very important. I think well, with this week, I think the visibility of social farming in Europe is really increased, because we have the week of the social farming in the Netherlands, and even in Ireland we have the week of Social Farming Awareness Week. So I think we are doing a very good job, but the experts are stressing out that it's very important to communicate, not only to communicate the benefits for participants, but also communicate the benefits for farmers and for the rural areas. For instance, that social farming can also change the image of agriculture. I know from a lot of stories and also from research that, for instance, in the Netherlands, big farmers for in history had not such a good image, or even with the discussions now on nitrogen, that some farmers don't have a really good image, but that farmers that are changed into social farming say that their community looks differently to what they are doing. And that also social farming could play a role in communicating the role of farming in food production, because people are coming to the farm, they see what is happening there. So the experts expressed that it would be very important that national federations of care farmers would disseminate the best practices and what we are doing in the field, and also develop evidence based on the social farming sector. Well, and at last, one of the points that was also raised is that social agriculture can play also an important role in making green spaces more accessible, not only for people with disabilities, but to a wider public. Because if we are looking back to the COVID times, or I hope that we can look back, we see that there was a lot of demand of green spaces. Lots of people would like to go into nature, or would like to have space. And the experts also think that in this way, social farms could also open their farmyards for a wider audience than not only for people with a disability. And said this, this will also be the challenge. We will have a hackathon. That's a kind of contest between students and professionals, or with students and professionals, in November in Wageningen. And with the question, think of innovative ways to open up the social agricultural sector to a wider audience. So I would also like to invite you all to think along with us. And if you're interested, to also sign up or get any information about this hackathon, because we would love to discuss also with you as professionals about this question in the future. So with this, I would like to end my overview. And if you would like to know any more about the project SOFAR team or Green4C, you can watch the websites, and you can scan the QR code with the dinosaur if you like to get more information about the hackathon. So thanks for your attention. And well, I hope I give some food for thoughts in the discussion later this evening.
Well, thank you very much, Marjolein. I don't have any question yet, so I'm going to ask one myself that I've been interested in. I think care farming in Italy is one of the older sectors. I think it's been there longer than in the Netherlands, for instance. Of course, there was basically always care farming in the history of agriculture, but in the way it's very focused now, Italy was one of the first. And in my perspective, it has never been able to professionalize because it never got the funding or the organization. But maybe they love being a care farmer just as much as a Dutch care farmer. What do you think is better?
Well, I just remind of an excursion I had in July on a social farm in Italy, and there actually the farmer that run that social farm, we had, of course, we discussed together what were the differences, and well, he was a bit jealous on the Dutch situation actually, because it was pretty hard work there, and it also depends on what kind of legal kind of position you have as a farmer. If you choose to be a social cooperatives, you can't get any revenues from agriculture. You know, it's a really kind of if you from the basis you go into one legal kind of setting for your farm, you're kind of fixed for a couple of years. So you need to think it very roughly what you will do. And from his perspective, he said that it's really hard working work in Italy nowadays as a social farmer. And yeah, and of course they have some regional organizations, but the only benefit you have is that you as a farmer could maybe provide a specific foods for a school canteen or hospitals, or you're maybe more visible for municipalities. But it's he was quite jealous on the Dutch situation. Yeah.
Okay, I see a question from Simone.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Marjolein, for your nice overview. And I have a question for clarification. You were talking about the development of training materials for future social farmers. And I was wondering, is there any material, or could it easily be adopted for professionals who are going to work in the regular sector? I'm working for the University of Applied Sciences, and we do educate nurses and social workers who are, some of them or most of them, will go to work in the regular sectors. But at the same time, I noticed that there is still a lot to learn from the care farming sector. So I was wondering, can you say a little bit more about to what extent these materials are also useful for the regular professionals?
Yeah, well, I think actually it's a very interesting question, because there are, of course, lots of unique elements of the social farming or the social farm that could be implemented in regular healthcare as well. And I think actually I'm also looking at Aisling and Brian, because they also work together with me in this project. But I do think if I look to the chapters, they are quite focused on, I even read one of the chapters about elderly, but we have a lot of different target groups. And I think there are some nice examples of how you, for instance, with using the farm environments for people that are, kind of have unlimited ideas of what they can do. You can, for instance, say, well, you just focus on this plot of 1 by 1 square meter. Hey, you make kind of boundaries for yourself, but setting boundaries also is in regular healthcare. It's also very important, also at other day activity centers. So I think that kind of examples that we are kind of practical examples that are used on social farms, I think some of them could also be kind of copy and paste for the regular healthcare sector. So to me, that would actually be very interesting to see together with you how we could pick those examples and try to use them for the regular sector as well. Yes.
And I think care farms often are started by people who get frustrated within the system and are very proud of what they recreate in their own setting. And I actually had a call from people from New Zealand, from nursing homes that were trying to adopt the same magic that a care farm can provide. And when they asked me what that was requiring, I said, well, somebody who owns the place, who produces food. And at the end, we basically agreed that they could not create it in their own way. They would have to work with farmers. And what I think was interesting too in your story that I've recognized, whenever there is personal funding, so the client can make their own choice, that's where care farming tends to grow. And then later they will be able to also get contracts more publicly. But the personal contracts is what it requires for the market of healthcare to open up.
Yeah, we do see that. Yeah. And I think, Simone de Bruin, it's also a kind of invitation. I know that you will be there on Friday, so I think we should meet each other there. And I will also bring your question to the meeting in Neubrandenburg next week in our project. I think it would be wonderful to have that cooperation.
Yeah, well, that's well, let's explore what's possible. But yeah. I'm happy to share ideas about it.
Yeah, great.
All right. Any other questions at this time? No? Well, I will provide, let's say, a 5-minute break for everyone who wants to get a drink, and then we will have our visitors from the other countries speaking. So Don't go away. Come back in 5 minutes. We'll continue at 19. All right. I will slowly call people back. For those that are mindful of the chat, you can see that Nicole is already sharing some things from Austria. Sometimes it seems like care farming is an export product too, because Nicole is originally Dutch. And Dorrit Haubenhofer, who was actually German, lived in the Netherlands for a while and then worked in care farming in Switzerland, and now, in Austria, and now in Switzerland. So that's interesting. But I don't think Nicole's background was in care farming at all when you moved to Austria. Anyway, I wanted to ask Nicole to talk about care farming in Austria, which is also quite well developed. And I know you're very connected with the German-speaking world around you. But if you could show us a little bit about what care farming is like in Austria, that will be great.
Thanks, Martin. Welcome. I'm Nicole Prop. Actually, I'm Dutch. So it's also like Marjolein is saying it's strange for me to talk English. Normally I speak German, or when I don't speak German, I speak Limburgs. Ik kom uit Maastricht, dus goedenavond aan alle jullie die toehoren uit Limburg. Maar ik woon al 30 jaar in Wenen, dus so I will continue in English. So actually I'm, like Martin said, I was coming from the southern part of the Netherlands, and I moved to Vienna actually 30 years ago. I studied economics, and I worked in large companies internationally. And then my parents, on the right side, you see the Ophovenhof. That's a care farm in Sittard, in the southern part of the Netherlands. And my parents, they worked at the care farm. And as I was 40, so 12 years ago, I had didn't want to stay anymore in the shareholder value world. So I decided to stop this kind of business and actually switched since 2012 to Green Care in Austria. So actually one of the first trips, we were 2012, you see on the left side, we visited with stakeholders from Austria, 3 care farms in the southern part of the Netherlands, the Kaiserbosch, the Asselterhof, and Hoeve de Kolder. I don't know if they are still certified care farms in the Netherlands, but 2012 we visited those farms. Actually, the Austria, just as a comparison for you, Austria is nearly 84,000 square meters, so it's twice as big as the Netherlands. And the number of inhabitants I think is half of it. I think the Netherlands, you have something like 14.5 million, 17.5 million inhabitants. So in Austria, we have nearly 9 million. We have a lot of mountains, of course, but that's very located here in Austria, in the middle of Europe. Yeah, like I said, I studied business economics, and I think it's very useful when you studied economics because Marjolein was having quite a lot of good figures. And I think it's very important based on awareness. Awareness is very important, but also facts and figures. So it's really a business. And I think congratulations to the Netherlands, because you're having a lot of revenue, and also a lot of revenue per farms, 200,000 euros a year as a revenue figure. It's congratulations. I will tell you a little bit about the Austrian world. Actually, I tried to get a farmer tonight, but I don't know how it is in the Netherlands, but we still have Corona. And this farmer wife, she's having Corona. So I just do the presentation myself. We have quite a lot of challenges in Austria. I think you have the same in the Netherlands or in the other countries, just an abstract. We have quite a lot of loss of working days. Marjolein was talking about that. So that's, I think, a target audience for the future. We have more than 4 million people who are not able to work because of stress and depression. We have a lot of younger people with overweight. We have 31,000 children with special educational needs. We have the number of getting older, which is great. But in Austria, we will have 2.8 million people elder than 65 in the year 2060. And a big problem, I think you have the 2 in the Netherlands and in Italy or in Ireland, is a lot of people are suffering from dementia. We think in Austria we will have about 260,000 people suffering from dementia in the year 2060. So I think from a perspective of a society, we have a lot of challenges, which I actually didn't include it, is the challenges we have in the area of people with disabilities. We have a lot of challenges there too. But we also have a lot of challenges from the farming sector. It was interesting for me, maybe we can discuss later on if you have similar challenges in Austria, we have a decline of 35% active farms since Austria is part of the EU. We have now 156 farms. The problem we have in Austria is the rural migration. A lot of young women are leaving the countryside. We have the issue of the price gap. The farmers are getting less. The customers are paying more for the food. The problem of finding a successor, the globalization, the climate change, you know that too. But that's all a lot of challenges to get the small-scaled agricultural structure in Austria. So Austria has a very small-scaled agricultural structure. That's unique. That's also beautiful. When you sometimes maybe go on vacation to Austria, it's really a nice landscape, but that's also on the other side a big challenge from a green care, from an agricultural perspective. So what are we doing there? We are trying to build a bridge in Austria between the agricultural and the social challenges. And actually we have a registered trademark. It's called Green Care Where People Flourish. You see the logo on the right bottom of the slide. And what we are trying to do, our setting in Austria, maybe it's a little bit different from other countries, but our setting is always an active agricultural farm in a cooperation with a social agency or institution. So we want active farms. We don't want farms who are already closed. So we always have an active farm, and the active farm is cooperating with an institution. So we then create a place to work or a place of education, a place of health, or a place to live. That's actually the 4 sectors we have in Austria. And it's always about the education, the well-being, and the social integration of the customers, of course. So it's a social innovation for the rural regions in Austria. That's actually the idea we understand green care on agricultural businesses. Of course, we have green care in the traditional setting, but my job or my focus is the active farms being part of that.
So Nicole, is it in that case that the farmer, so the institution has the contract and they pay the farmer for the care?
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's of course, they are paying for the infrastructure and they are paying for the services. It's depending on the educational level of the farm, on the farmer wife. It's mainly wives, farmer wives. If they have an educational level on health or social educational level, they get paid more if they are only having a farmer education. So that's the 2 pillars of paying the farms. So actually in Austria, we have green care is part of diversification. So in Austria, maybe listeners are having a trip already to Austria on a farm on a holiday. That's a very old kind of diversification. It's more than 30 years old. We have one form, direct marketing. So people are buying products directly from the farm. And since 2011, we have social services, and the social services, we call them green care. We see this diversification not only in agriculture and forestry areas, but also in Austria, social agencies and institutions, they also need to diversify their portfolio. So that's the setting in Austria. Maybe it's clearer like this view. In Austria, the farmers are becoming social political players. So they're becoming part of this world of they're thinking out of the box. So we try in Austria to connect on the left-hand side the active farms, and on the other side, we try to connect them with the educational, healthcare, social, and economic systems. And trying to connect them is, of course, difficult because every box you see here, they have own laws, they speak their own language, they have their own structures. And actually, that is our work, the plus in the middle, that's our work, the business development. You can say that we are doing business development to connect all the boxes together, make sure that children and young adults get green care offers. We have nursing care and residence facilities for elderly people, people with disabilities, and also quite a good market is the health promotion market, which is decreasing in Austria. So we are trying to make sure that the small-scale agricultural structure in Austria is moving on. And that's actually our job, because we are coming from the Ministry of Agriculture. That's actually the direction we are coming from. Yes, maybe two samples. I mean, we have quite a lot of examples. That was the idea, to get Renate Pointner tonight with you, but it's not possible. I can show you on the left-hand side, it's in the upper Austria. That's a kindergarten on a farm. Bettina Haas, she's a farmer and a trained kindergarten teacher, and she has a kindergarten on a farm. Six jobs are generated, so 6 people are working on the farm, and 40 children are actually Monday to Friday based on this kindergarten. And the kindergarten has a waiting list of 3 years. So she could expand, but she's not expanding because she wants this scale with 40 children. On the other hand, we have also in the Upper Austria a day center for elderly people. Here 3 jobs are generated, and 8 care places are actually based on this farm. And they are working a lot with animals. And of course, all of those projects in Austria, in the beginning, there is a lot of skepticism. And if it then works, then everybody is coming and saying, hey, it's great, but it takes time, and it takes a lot of awareness and breaking down barriers in the heads of the people as they think, what's that, farmers, what are they doing there? So that's, I think, similar in other countries. The benefits, I think we have some benefits for everybody. We call our project Green Care Where People Flourish. What's very important in Austria, I don't know how it is in other countries, but in Austria, we use existing structures. So we use existing farms. We are not building something new. In Austria, we are world champion. We have sealing. We do a lot of sealing, ground sealing. And we do 31 football fields a day. We do some, I don't know how to say it in English, ground sealing. So Bodenverbrauch. So it's 30 football fields a day. So it's a lot of sealing. And if we use existing farms, we don't do that, and we have a positive influence on the climate change. Also important in Austria that we are not in competition. So we are not in competition with conventional offers because we work together with the conventional sector. So it's not a competition. We enlarge the social competences in agriculture, and we create a lot of new jobs. We had a study in Austria. We have the Austrian Institute for Business Research. It's called the WIFO. And we did the research upon 39 farms, and they generate a value chain of 11.3 million euros a year. And on the farms directly, on the 39 farms, we generate 282 employees are working on those farms. And we have nearly 10,000 customers a year, only on those nearly 40 green care farms. So it's very important for us in Austria to do a lot of research on business key performance indicators to show that it's not only daydreaming, because it's really an economical boost for the region. And we want to actually maintain the cultural landscape. And very important is the farmers. They sell a lot of products to the clients, and we think they sell the social quality of life. And that's also a product which they sell and which is worth paying for. So that's actually why we think we have benefits for everybody. How we do this in Austria? Actually, we have a competence network across the federal states. In Austria, we have 9 federal states. And you see on the upper part of the slide, you see again the boxes on the left side, the educational, health, social, and economic systems. And we have in Austria at the moment 27 stakeholders in a working group. We founded the working group in 2014. And those stakeholders, they support us to implement the green care offers in Austria. That's the strategic level. And on the operational level, on the end of the slide, you see the association Green Care Austria. We founded the association in 2015, and the members are the 9 chambers of agriculture. So in Austria, we are very strong coming from the agricultural part. I know in Norway it's more the health being part, but in Austria it's actually the agricultural area where you're coming from. But we are trying to connect with the stakeholders we need to be successful. So actually our strategic approach in Austria, of course, we are in line with the SDGs. We are part of the government program. That's important for us. So we have a section on the government program at the moment. And together with the working group, based on the Norwegian model, we wrote 10 targets. I don't want to go through all them because I only have 15 minutes. So Martin, you have to tell me if I'm too long. But we have a strategy with a lot of targets. And what Marjolein was also telling a lot is on awareness, on financial models, on research, and of course of educational programs, on offers, but also on legal requirements. In Austria, it's very important that everything is legally clean. So it's a very important target for the successful implementation in Austria to have the legal requirements. What we are doing also is we focus on communities. In Austria, we have more than 2,000 communities, and we have to focus on the majors of the communities, that they know that the farms are not producing only food, but that the farms are also producing social services. So that's a focus in Austria. Without the communities, it's very difficult to implement green care offers in Austria. At the moment, we have 110 green care certified farms. I want to thank Martin. Martin, he's a role model, Norway and the Netherlands. Actually, our certification program in Austria, we did quite a lot of benchmark on the Netherlands. So thank you very much for that. We have at the moment 110 farms certified, and they offer 187 green care offers. So some farms have more offers. We saw a figure from Marjolein where she says that in Austria there are 536 green care farms. Then you will say, okay, that's only 110. What's the difference? The difference between the 536 farms of Marjolein and the 110 farms here is that in Austria there is a special program from the Ministry of Agriculture. It's called School on a Farm. And School on the Farm in the Netherlands, in Austria, are 500 farms. So 500 farms are having this special project, School on a Farm, and they will also be calculated as green care. So when you have the 110 plus the 500 School on a Farm farms, then you come to approximately 600 official green care farms in Austria. We have this 100 farms on our website, so it's greencareoe.at. You can click on all those farms with all details. You get them per federal state, and you can also see the target audience and what they are doing. So if you have time, please feel free to visit the website. It's in German, but I think it's less text and a lot of pictures. So I think it's also good for you to maybe have a view on it. Like I said, the role model is Norway and the Netherlands for the certification. Also, the Norwegian people have a great certification process. So yeah, that's, I think, clear. I don't know how my time is. Martin, give me a, because otherwise I have to skip some slides.
Yes, you are.
Yeah,
you're basically at your time.
I'm at my time, so I skip some time. What's important for me before I finish my presentation is the quality assurance. In Austria, the quality assurance is totally important. Otherwise, it's not possible in Austria to implement green care products. So we have a quality assurance in business development. We have a quality assurance in the qualification of the farmers, on the farm animals, and on the farms themselves. And all those quality assurance measurements and key performance indicators are needed in Austria. Otherwise, it's not possible to start green care, because it's sort of, yeah, it's like it is in Austria. Austria, it's not so, it's more federalism as in the Netherlands. Our key performance indicators, I will skip that because I think you get the presentation. But for us, it's very important to do personal consulting meetings with farms. We do a lot of advertising. We have a lot of advertising value. We have 1,000 farmers coming to 30 events. So we do a lot of PR and marketing in Austria. We have a team in Austria with 9 people of the Chambers of Agriculture. They're implementing the green care services, and we have the association on the right side. So that's the team. It's not full-time employees. It's actually the people, the heads, but they're not working 40 hours a week. But that's the team in Austria. The rural development program, like Marjolein is saying, in Italy, we also have fundings by the rural development program in Austria. We also have fundings for the farmers. So the farmers also get fundings for the eligible costs. We will do that also in the next rural development program. Yeah, we think in Austria, maybe that's my conclusion. In Austria, the green care offers are premium products. So we have premium products. We position them as premium products in the rural areas. We have a high level of flexibility. And we have a contribution to public services and a contribution to stay, because a lot of people are leaving the rural areas. So that's actually the conclusion, and that's why we are actually doing this. And that's my contact details. So please feel free to contact me, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Bedankt. Thank you
all. There was one question right there at the end. What the insurance looks like for farm animal insurance.
Yeah, so we have an assurance that the animals on the farm, they need to be trained. That's based on the target audience, and depending on the animals you have a training program, and this training program is certified. So if you work with elderly people or with people with disabilities, then you cannot use certain animals. And based on that, there is an own certification process for the animals. So yeah, that's
interesting. Yeah, we are actually in the Netherlands now. We are starting a new project again with the interaction of human and animals, and how to make sure that both the animal is treated well and the human, especially in their interaction of care. And so that would be interesting. I'll have to write that down, that we learn from you in this case. And that's the whole point. I think you say we are inspiration to you, and hopefully we can be an inspiration to each other. There was actually 2 more questions. Do you have any economic numbers in the value of care that's provided per care farm?
I mean, we have the numbers. Actually, we did this research last year with 39 farms. So, and that are data we have. So we have all the detailed data, but we are not able to publish the data per farm. So we only can publish the cumulation of the 39 farms.
Which is?
Because that's actually the thing that the farmers, they don't want to publish their own figures.
Yes, makes sense. Yeah.
So we have this value. So we have this economical value of 11.3 million. But all the details are also based on our website. But the figures you have in the Netherlands, that you know that a care farm has a revenue of 200,000 euros. Those details we don't have, and that's actually part of our next program in the next rural development program, to get more details on revenue. So we have a sum, but we don't have those detailed revenue figures.
If you wait long enough, then the government starts to require you to publish your numbers, which is already the case with us. So
yeah, we have to publish the number of employees.
Okay. And then there was one more question, logistics. I think that's the same in most countries. How do you get people to the farm? And I think that's a problem in the Netherlands. It'll probably be a problem in Austria as well.
I think it's even more a problem in Austria, because Austria is bigger. We have a lot of the rural areas in Austria are bigger than in the Netherlands. So when it's in the sector of people with disabilities, then it's no problem. Elderly people is also not that much of a problem. But of course, the communities, and that's why we want to exchange much more with the communities, because they have possibilities to have logistic solutions.
All right.
And Maarten, could I just ask one more question, but to Nicole?
Sure. Last one.
Yeah, because I was wondering, I heard from a colleague from Austria, from Vienna, that the kindergartens on the farms, they are in the Wald. You also have the kindergartens in Wald. They are quite elite. So how inclusive are those? I'm wondering, because I've heard from him that it's quite expensive to have your children on those specific locations. And also I hear that the waiting list is quite long.
Yeah.
Can you tell something about that?
Well, actually, it's true. I think it's Georg Wiesinger from Vienna. He has a lot of data on this kindergarten. Of course, we have a problem in in Austria. I guess it's similar in the Netherlands, that the kindergarten, there are two less places. So the government, they have to fulfill some targets. And for the smaller children underneath 3 years, we have a problem in Austria that there are two less places. So normally the kindergarten, you don't have to pay, and the kindergartens, also the one I show you, the Franzerhof in Upper Austria, it's a private kindergarten.
Yeah.
So yes, it's correct. It's correct. So we are trying to make some political meetings with the educational sector, that this elitäre touch, that it's no longer there. But at the moment, you're right, it's a private kindergarten.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering, because you presented that, and I've heard that from a colleague from Vienna. Yeah. So yeah, thank you. Yeah.
And as Arjan, indicates, we have kindergarten, kinderopvang, agrarische kinderopvang, and that's separate from the rest of care farming in the Netherlands. Just in the way we have identified the different parts of multifunctional agriculture. Anyway, thank you very much. There's more room for questions at the end. And yes, I am running a little late, but we unfortunately have our participant from Norway being sick, so we have a little bit of wiggle room. But without further ado, I'd like to ask Brian, who is from Ireland, which is where I was initially inspired to work for care farming in 1998. So for me, it's very special to hear the Irish accent and hear Irish farming on this webinar. And Brian has been able to invite some of his care farmers along, and so he will include them in the presentation. Go ahead, Brian.
Okay, I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yep. Well, I'll give a very quick run through, and it's more about the practical level in what's happening in Ireland, as opposed to the strategic, which Nicole has just gone through in terms of the Austrian, very similar. We're connecting various things and trying to build the bridges so that we can pass from one sector, one policy, one funding measure to many others to make it happen, because it's like a spider web. You must pass from here, there, and from the health sector to agriculture to education. So it's very similar at a strategic level. But my presentation is largely about what happens at national or at practical level across the country. So you'll see that, sorry now. So social farming in Ireland is very much a planned outcome-focused placement on a working ordinary farm. So we have had institutional social farming for generations in Ireland, now largely associated with large industrial mental health services or disability services, and people are taken advantage of there in their farming activities. So there's a history of good and bad. But we are focusing purely on farms where the person is supported, and it's a planned, outcome-focused support placement for that person. So it's very person-centered on the farm.
So, and of course, outcome-focused, does that mean that somebody comes in and they get funding for a specific goal, and yes, that's what you're paid for?
That's more or less it, but we focus on what the person's goals are. So it may be as simple as weight loss, to socialize with other people, to connect with their community. We have Ukrainians at the moment on farms, and it's to improve English and maybe integration. So it's very focused personal placement, and the farm provides the place and the activities to allow these things to happen. So, and we use the natural activity, the natural assets of the place, the people, and the activities that happen on that farm. So it's very much looking at that rather than the institutional settings of the past. Oh, sorry. So it's values-based. And I suppose that's important to us because we focus on the individual and their needs first and foremost. So if the person has difficulty communication, mobility issues, they're all taken into account. Language issues, so inclusion, and allowing the person to express their choice in what they do and how they're supported on the farm. And focusing on the values of the farm and the community as well. So it's community inclusion, very much focused on inclusion, and also on supporting the development of farms and farming as we see them in Ireland. And many people have goals of entering further training, education, employment, and they're supported in that as well. At the moment, placements are relatively short term because we're in what you could call the very early stages of development in Ireland. We haven't mainstreamed social farming to any great extent. So we're coming from a sort of a developmental and pilot phase, moving to, what would you say, from piloting to developmental, and we're hoping to mainstream in the next period. So people engage in the farm activities with the farm remaining a straightforward individual working farm, as opposed to moving to become an environment or an institution itself. And it's to differentiate the placement from a clinical environmental setting for people with disability, you know, for people in the education sector. A lot of young people, say, for instance, in the education sector don't fit. So they fit much better on a farm and can learn easier on the farm. So it's to maintain the farm environment. And the emphasis is on community connection, because farms aren't independent in the community. They're connected to all sorts of different things and can provide people with opportunities to move into other things, take up other interests, link with other people, and above all, people choose to take this opportunity. So the key elements are there. They're quite clear. They're very much the same in each country. We have the natural surroundings of the farm that allow for that psychological restoration, reducing stress, improving attention and capacity to focus on what's actually happening in front of you with the live animals or the plants that need care. The social connections. So people operate on the farm in small groups, are connected with the farm family, the visitors and people who come into that farm, and the contact there. And also the farms are involved in other social activities outside of the farm setting itself and bring the participants to those. And there's also the activities which are meaningful, and you know, animals need to be taken care of. They're going to be hungry. The plants need to be watered. You see them grow. So they're meaningful activities. People get a sense of responsibility, confidence, and achievement. So these are the natural things that we all understand from this. So who in Ireland has been benefiting in recent times? Our activity is, I suppose, 10 years old since we set up the first social farm in 2012. So we have many people, largely the high numbers are people in recovery from mental ill health, those with intellectual, physical or sensory disabilities. We have young people at risk of early school leaving, school refusing or exclusion in many different ways. Some people, young people in the justice system, you know, with the police or whatever. We have long-term people who are long-term employed and looking to get re-employment. We operate in our company, we operate in an IUPS project, so individual placement support. I saw it mentioned in, I think it was Marianne's, I'm not sure whose presentation already. It's a very focused placement for people in returning to work for mental health. So we link people to those other programs. We have a wide range of social inclusion programs in our company, as well as social farming activity. We are dealing quite a lot now with refugees and asylum seekers. We've had some Syrian refugees on farms. We now have quite a number of Ukrainian visitors to our farms. We have people with acquired brain injury, obviously the older people and those with dementia, and a number of people who've been homeless or have addictions or related issues, and a number of people who've been in the prison system or justice system, can be homeless and with addictions. Some people come with multiple challenges and are overcoming many different things in their lives. So we have seen all these on farms in recent years in our social farms. So what's driving the change in Ireland to move towards this? Because like we said, we had the religious institutions operate farms in their learning environments, in the healthcare in mental health disability settings, they're now deconstructed because they didn't work necessarily. Congregated settings don't work now because one size does not fit all. So what's happening? Excuse me now. Oh, so we have this model of disability that's emerging, person-centered, focused on inclusion and the change in culture and practice in the nature of disability. And it's set out in a number of policies, national policies, but also following the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities and trying to implement change to allow that to occur. People in the disability sector were also beginning to see, or at least their advocates and themselves, those people who advocate for themselves, were saying that the service was not delivering for them, that it wasn't fulfilling their lifelong changes and needs. And so they were putting pressure on the state to change these policy directions. New directions, the National Disability Strategy and others have changed the direction and said you must focus on the person and their needs as they emerge and change through their lifespan. Excuse me now. In the mental health service then, a vision for change, and now sharing the vision takes a community recovery model as opposed to clinical model. Yes, you need clinical support when people have breakdowns, but getting people to recover quickly and the early interventions in psychosis and that kind of thing. So you intervene early, you try and help people to recover and rebuild the connections or the issues to overcome the poor mental health. And so this requires integration and participation in both community, family life and work life to help recovery, as alongside the clinical support. But the medication and the medical model hasn't necessarily worked as well as it was planned or thought it could. And so the emphasis is changing in the system. And of course, we have a lot of person-centered and progressive approaches. So supporting people to progress along a continuum. And this looks at community work, community building, youth work, supporting people who are long-term unemployed and other excluded groups and migrants to connect. Our motto, or our tagline, as you can see in our logo here, is new opportunities. So we're providing new opportunities for the farmer, the farm family, and for the farming communities. We're also connecting people. So connecting people with the natural environment, with all that happens in taking care of plants and animals, but also connecting them with other people. So when people go to the farm, they're in contact with other people, focused on looking after the animals, but able to connect through that and rebuild their lives. And also connecting people with, where food comes from, with the skills that are involved in farming and taking care of animals. There's a huge range of skills and activities on farms that are, in some cases, been lost. And so we connect people with all of that and with other people, of course. And the whole purpose is to enhance lives of all and have a more inclusive communities, more inclusive lives for people in the community where they live, so they can choose a farm close to where they live, etc. So that encompasses what we're doing and why we're doing it. So how does it work here in Ireland? Participants arrive at the farm, they're supported by a service and advocate family who effectively commission the placement. And they build the placement with us as the plus in the middle that Nicole showed, because we have the farms on one side, we have the municipal agencies and services on the other side, and we're the plus in the middle, helping this commissioning to take place. We, as in Social Farming Ireland and the project we have here. There's an individual support plan developed by the individual as to what the goals are and what they want to get from the placement on the farm, so that there's a meaningful focus on what they're doing, why they're doing it, and that's drawn up by the person. It can be relatively simple, and it's between the commissioning entity, which can be a service, an advocate, family, or whatever, and the individual and the farm. So they look at different farms and they say, I'd like to go to that farm, I'd like to go to this farm. They choose where they believe they can get the best support. Maybe a farm that works with animals, there may be some horses. So somebody chooses that particular activities, or they may focus on horticulture projects or whatever. Farmers go through a wide range of rigorous induction, vetting, safety training, police clearance, and obviously to have the insurance on the farm. We have brought this to a stage where it's almost formalized as a quality assurance process, but it's to assure the governance of the placements so that nobody's taken advantage of, that if anything happens in terms of safety, if somebody has a breakdown on the farm or any other issues, that they can be addressed quickly so that everyone knows what to do. So that process is put in place before farms are established. And we are proposing in the very near future to formalize that into a quality assurance process. And to have that as a mark for farms that can be recognized both by the farming community and also by the Health and Social Care Service. Currently, placements are short term. Generally, a farm will be available 2 days, maybe 2.5 days a week, no more, because they're working farms. Farms don't have a huge amount of time to commit, but they can and do. And the groups are small on farms. So 1 to 4 participants on the farm at any one time. And we're, as I said, the key intermediary. Farms are paid roughly, you could say, well, it varies above and below about 80 euros per person per day. So with 3 people on the farm, you know, it's small, but it's more than the 40 euros in Flanders or in Belgium. So, and it makes it worthwhile. Some farms are doing okay. It's very hard to say. Aisling is here, and Aisling has done a piece of work on the piece of research on the cost benefit. And as I said, we're just building. So the numbers that you speak of in Holland, in the Dutch situation, are not anything like we're seeing here, numbers per farm, but they're building. And obviously, then when the placement takes place, post-participation or post-placement reflection is a key component to see if people have achieved what they felt they had set out to do. As I said, the placements can vary from, we have placements now varying from, say, the shortest will be about 10 weeks up to, well, there are some people going to farms on an ongoing basis, but 10, 15, 20, 26 weeks, up to 40 weeks at times. And as I said, a small number of people are now accessing placements on a full-time basis on farms. So we're only moving towards a place where it's going to be mainstreamed, which is as one of the challenges you have. I'll mention them at the end. So what's happened in Ireland is there's a timeline, I suppose, of where we've come from and where our involvement started. I started in 2006 working on a SOFAR research project that University College Dublin were involved with. And there was German, Italian, I think French, and UK, and led by the University of Pisa. And there was some reports done on that. We did some work then with UCD and Deirdre O'Connor through Cost Action. I know she's involved in Green for Sea project as well. And then we set up a community of practice from 2008 to 2011. So that involved the stakeholders that you mentioned, Nicole, some healthcare professionals, some healthcare services, farming organizations, agricultural advisory agencies, people who were, we had done a state of the art in the UCD research project, and we identified some people who were social farming in the early phases. As Martin said, he was here in whenever 25 years ago and saw some early stage social farming developing. So we brought them together as a community of practice, and then eventually applied with University College Dublin, ourselves and the Queen's University, to the Interreg 4A, I think, 3A, anyway. And we got a cross-border development project in which we set up the first social farm in 2012, as we understand them now. And then that project finished, and our Department of Agriculture decided to support an interim project between 15 and 16, and then the tendered out support, which we now have from 2017 onwards. So we have tendered to the Department of Agriculture twice in that period and won an award of tender, and I'll show them to you in a few minutes. So that's the projection or the trajectory of development. So it came from research phase to piloting into what I would classify probably as a development stage, and the next stage, who knows, it could be another 10 years, will be the mainstreaming phase, but hopefully not, but we'll see. So what's been supported here in Ireland in what we do and where we've come to. So DAFM is our Department of Agriculture. So they're funding a national network project, which Social Farming Ireland is the brand for it. It's 400,000 euros a year. And then they're funding four smaller projects at 100,000 euros each year. And that's in through the tender. The 4 projects are called model projects. One of them is an institutional training center in the south of the country that's supporting people with Down syndrome in skills development. About 10 people per year go through this training project on this farm. It's a horticultural setting, but it's institutional. The other one is in a small county. We have 26 counties in the Republic of Ireland, 32 in the whole of Ireland, and the department is funding a small project in one county, which looks at a voluntary model. So the farmers are not paid. They offer their time, and the placements are full-time. So people come year on year, every week for 3, 4, 5 years. So, and the farmers provide the support voluntarily. They're not get paid, and the participants don't get paid. So, and that's the other one then is more recent than that, and it's focused around community gardens. And the 4th model project is the one that Aisling works on, and we do a number of pieces of research on that and report on what we find. And our project operates across the whole country here in the south of Ireland. Our original project worked cross-border, and the staff who worked with us have now gone off and set up a network in Northern Ireland. So we're very closely associated with them, and that's called Rural Support. So Leitrim Development Company is the company that has this contract and delivers this model project. And as I said, we have a research policy project as well. And Dr. Moroney, she'll speak just briefly here at the end as well, as she's attending today. The National Network Project, as I said, we have a coordinator, and we have 5 development officers and an administrator, or 4 development officers and administrator. So they cover the whole country, and they're kind of facilitating the placements, helping farmers be established. And you can see there, we're training farmers and getting them inducted and set up. We're providing support with the 5 regional development officers. The main reason for this is to provide governance and accountability to oversee the placements so that there's no issues. And we also have a small amount of money there to cover the cost of the first round of placements. So it's called sampling. And that's what I've said, that we're in the development or pilot phase. And we do what Nicole said, we do a lot of media. We've been on TV, radio, regional, local, national, even international. And we're providing a lot of information to the public about social farming and Greek care research. So that's the role, I suppose, of the National Network. Aisling has worked on these projects and research reports, and they're all on our website. So you can see the interaction there: social farming in the mental health service, social farming in youth work with relevance to the benefits and pathways to support young people, social farming and the social inclusion. We have a particular program here called Social Inclusion and Community Activation. It's a national program that supports people, migrants, people with disability, older people. And so we link with that project around the country. And we are one of the 35 development companies implementing that project nationally. So we interact with our colleagues who are doing that. We have social farming and the Leave and Cert Applied, that's in the education system case study there. And we also have a Healthy Ireland program, which looks at wellness, obesity, and activity, physical activity, and how we interact with that, because we've received funding across all these elements to support placements. I'll talk maybe briefly about that. Sorry,
yeah,
Mark.
We're getting close to the end of your time slot.
So in 2022, 700 participants so far on farms, roughly 120 active farms with over 200 trained farmers. We have national coverage, as I said. There's a photograph there of some Ukrainian refugees taken at the weekend. They were featured on a radio, or a national radio program that was looking at the harvest. Roughly this year, we've paid about 500,000 euros out to social farms. Now, that's the social farms we interact with. It's not a lot of money. It is a lot of money in some ways. It's not a lot of money in other ways, but it's certainly important for us that farmers see this and know that it's developing. As I said, we're between that sampling, piloting, development stage and mainstreaming. And we have a national conference in June this year, which Martin and Mary Lann were there. And we have the conclusion of the benefits, public research and publication. And we had their Minister for Agriculture and 2 social farms this year, and he launched this Social Farming Awareness Week. So quite a lot. We have been involved in a number of Erasmus projects, and there's mention of one which we can send the link to. The challenges that we have are that we have too many multiple sources of funds for placements, and we're making regular once-off and repeating funding applications that take up far too much time. There are no individualized or personalized budgets for people with disability. That's an issue. The health and social care funding is not accessible to us. Nobody outside of some of the large corporations can access that. That's a problem. We need policy change. We're driving for it. It's much slower and difficult and it's frustrating. We have increasing demand for placements and also demand for more long-term placements from people, particularly with intellectual disability. We can't meet it because of the two previous issues. And we have inconsistent continuity of placements and blocks for farmers. So we can't guarantee a farmer that you'll have 10 weeks this year, or 26 weeks, or 40 weeks of placements. So it's inconsistent and is causing an issue. We have very slow change at government policy level in terms of social farming, despite significant engagement and positive feedback from ministerial level and civil servant level. And we have resourcing pressures because we're in that kind of gap between development and mainstream. So thank you for listening. We have a lot of things that are very ordinary things happening in ordinary places, but they're delivering extraordinary results as social farming. So thank you. Now, Aisling is here, or Drew and Elizabeth are here, so they might just say a few words. And Aisling, a few words. She's also an agri coordinating expert for focus group on social farming with the European Innovation Partnerships. So she'll very briefly speak on that. And then Drew and Elizabeth will give a very short input as well on their experience. I'm not sure if they're still here or if they can hear or if they can unmute.
Maybe I'll go first, just
okay.
While we're waiting for Drew and Elspeth. Yes, Brian has more or less said it all. I just wanted to maybe highlight the fact that I have recently been asked to coordinate a focus group on social farming, which EIP Agri, which many of you will be familiar with, is putting together a focus group. They do this periodically. They take a particular subject which they feel demands a little bit more attention. And one of the subjects they've chosen this year at the moment is social farming. So they are bringing together 20 experts on social farming from around Europe. I fully expect that some of you on this call will be on that focus group. Some of you will have put in your applications to be on it there a few weeks ago, or maybe it's probably just a few weeks ago at this stage.
I know at least 2 here.
Okay, great. So I'm going to be coordinating that, which I'm really delighted to say. And the first meeting, formal meeting, will be in January, but prior to that, there'll be some other preliminary work going on around a discussion paper and all of that. And then the second meeting then I think will be in May. So for those of you who are going to be on that steering group and focus group, and those of you who aren't, I am here to hear what people have to say. It's a great opportunity to, I suppose, because a lot of us are involved in Erasmus projects, but we maybe get a slice. We get to see what's happening in 4 countries, or we get to see what's happening in 3 countries. This is an opportunity I would hope, and I'm hoping there's applications in from as many countries as possible. We get to see maybe something closer to the whole picture, and can do some of the work on just developing what is the state of the art, what are the key challenges, how can we move forward. A key issue, as we've just even discovered it, is just the unevenness, I suppose, of development due to a range of contextual factors that vary across different countries, different healthcare systems, different cultures. Some have a lack of farmers, some have a lack of money to pay for healthcare. So, and some have all of the problems. So this is an opportunity for us all to get together. So I really look forward to seeing some of you on that focus group, and also others that I will hopefully get to interact with for people who can't be on the focus group. Because as we can see from the amount of people on this call this evening, there's huge interest in this. So 20 certainly doesn't probably justify the level of interest. So that's all I'll say. I'm sorry. And I know we've taken up an awful lot.
Yeah, and I see Drew and Elizabeth there have put up their...
Yeah. You wanted Irish accent, too many.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good evening, Drew, Elizabeth. You're welcome.
Hey, good evening. It's wonderful to represent tonight. Can you hear me already?
We have to mute one of them. Your iPhone, probably. There. Now try again.
Yes. So a lot of information tonight to take in.
For some reason, it's echoing.
All right, we see here. Is that better now?
Yes.
Right. Okay. As you heard earlier, over Ireland today or this week now, there's a big promotion on social farming. And this morning we hosted one of these events on our farm this morning for farmers to come and hear about social farming. And it was quite a good success. We had a good turnout. So hopefully we'll get more farmers to sign up and train to deliver social farming. So we're in our third year now delivering social farming on our farm here with my wife Elspeth and my son Ashley and my daughter Grace. We're a family farm up in the northwest of Ireland, out beside the Atlantic Ocean here. It's a dairy farm with tourism. And since we've got into the social farming scene and delivered it, it has opened a lot of other opportunities for us in education, from children from 6 years old right up to 17, 18-year-olds. And now in the last couple of weeks, we're developing a program with one of the universities in Ireland. So it's something we're very passionate about. We've had good success with some of our participants who come here, who've got back into full-time employment. We've done a lot of work with young boys from the secondary school system where school wasn't for them. We've encouraged them to go back to school, sit their exams, and some have gone into third level education. We have seen some people got integrated back into the community again, who have got maybe a wee bit isolated over the years, and now they're out meeting people and mixing again. The training is very important as regards a social farmer, and Ireland is very suitable for social farming because our farms in generally are quite small, and the people by nature would be kind and good-hearted and would deliver a good outcome for social farming. So I think my wife might want to say just a few words here.
Yes, hello, good evening, everybody. My background is nursing, and I'm very passionate about the whole social farming concept, and I feel the holistic health and the person-centered approach is very important. We work with all our farm animals here. We work with llamas. We have found that the participants develop positive feelings when they're surrounded with the animals. The animals don't need to do anything very important. They engage with the animals, they engage with us. They develop new relationships with us. They learn to look after the animal, and it becomes very meaningful, and they develop a sense of achievement, which enhances their self-esteem. It empowers the participants, it enhances their quality of life, and it's very much about the community inclusion and taking the participants to what we would normally do as part of our farming activities. We embrace the core values of respect, very importantly, choice and empathy and compassion within the whole process. And we feel that in contact with nature, it heals people and restores people and brings people back to balance, especially after what we have seen in the pandemic and during the lockdowns. So thank you very much indeed.
Yes, well, and I would love to hear much more, but I do want to do Rebecca justice as well. I think many of the Dutch farmers will recognize what you tell, and I have now seen care farming, I think in 7 different countries. Marjolein has probably seen more, but it's the things you say are very much the thing we see all over the world. And it seems to be that the cultural setting or the institutional setting is different in all countries, but the magic that occurs when you place somebody with a need on a farm is the same world over. And where you talked a little bit about where you recently started, I thought it'd be fun to include one country where everything is still new and fresh. We have invited Rebecca Churchyard to also speak to us. She is from Canada. She's actually hosting, her website is Care Farming Canada, which sounds like it would be similar to what we've heard people talk about. But Rebecca, can you, there's your link in the chat. Can you talk a little bit about what you do and how many colleagues do you have?
Firstly, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I am just over the moon because usually I'm explaining to people, this is what a care farm is, but y'all are much further advanced than that. And thank you also for the English, because then I could follow along and follow all the links and everything. So I appreciate the pain of those that express that. Thank you very much for that. It was awesome. Wow. Okay. So in Canada, it's about an hour away, a bit less than that from Toronto, Ontario. So that's where you folks might recognize. We have a partnership with Andrews Farm Market and Winery. So that's our farm partner. It's a 165-acre farm. The program that I run is specifically for people with dementia. I've had questions about different populations, which we've already covered really well today. It's possible in the future for the first year, which we just had this past season. We had our last program day last Monday. I'm sticking just with people with dementia because I want to make sure that the staff are trained specifically to support that population. When you bring in other groups, you have to look at different types of training and designations. My staffing contract, so what I did is I outsourced because it is just me running it on the corner of my desk, which is how I imagine a lot of other people started. I hired out the direct care contract with Right at Home. So they provide a lot of personal support in people's homes for people with dementia. So a lot of the personal care needs and things like that. We created a new staffing position called Green Care Provider. So that is a person who has the skills and trainings of a healthcare worker and also has agricultural interest and experience. I myself, I'm a social worker and I specialize in gerontology. I jotted down a few points because I know we don't have that much time. So I'll just kind of speak on the context that we got from other countries. The company is a social enterprise. So I'm a social entrepreneur. And that social enterprise designation means it is technically a for-profit incorporation, but has a triangle of pursuits: people, so the social piece that everyone's covered, profit, and planet, so that it's good for the environment. What it looks like on the farm is the farm itself is a pick your own fruit farm. So our program operates somewhat with the seasonality of the produce. So a lot of berries, apples, vegetables, and then gourd squashes later on in the season. There are animals there. Our folks do not go in the pens with the animals. That's just not something we're touching right now, but they can look at them and interact with them, but not going in touching at this stage. And the majority of the programming happens in a half-acre plot called the Sensory Garden. I'd love another time to show you kind of the pictures. We built a lot of community days where we built boxes. So boxes at different heights so that people could have more accessible options for gardening. They just bend over, sometimes just reach over. It looks really neat, our half-acre plot. We also have several trellises where we grew different varieties of beans so that they go up and over. So we have nice arbors. A couple partnerships that I wanted to mention. And to give some context to me, I started planning about 8 years ago after my grandparents passed away in 2014. My grandpa had dementia. He was a farmer. So very classic story, I think, for a lot of people. Learned about it from actually Dr. De Bruin at a conference. And I was like, oh yeah, why don't we have that? And learned a lot from the different levels of government as to why we don't have that there and why I don't think it's coming, hence why I'm a company. Another neat partnership that we have is with the Lunchbox Cafe, which is another social enterprise, but they do catering and food services. And the people who work there are people with developmental intellectuals or differences. So I liked that connection a lot. Also don't have an industrial kitchen. So we don't cook directly on site. That's where we get our lunch from. Another partnership is for the produce. We have, I'm trying to think, last week we donated probably 300 pounds of tomatoes and peppers, leeks, just tons of produce to our food bank. That's really the best kind of solution I can think of without people who pay to come to the program also paying for the produce, was to donate it to the food bank. It's also how I communicate the program to a lot of our folks who are somewhat, at least in Canada, wary of day programs and something that is designed for their concern, right? So in this case, dementia. So I say, we're looking for volunteers. We're going to grow food for the food bank. Are you interested? We've heard about you in the community, and that has worked really well. Yeah, I could ramble on forever. I think from my side, in such early stages, what I've learned a lot this year is rather than try to get the intake and assessment pieces perfect, I'm mostly focusing on open house. Invite people to come and see it, to understand the intersectionality of what everybody's covered so beautifully, and to see the space, and then focus very closely on the relationship. at such a small form. I have many papers from Martin, thank you so much, that help me think about the infrastructure considerations, the contracts. But what I focus on now is the relationship with the families, the people with dementia, their families, and talking to them a lot about what's working, what's not.
All right. And so where do you envision it to be in 5 years?
Oh, well, I mean, that's such a good question. I have a couple of different ways that I could expand. I could open up, do another day on the same farm, which is totally plausible and might be the best idea because we're getting community traction. But ideally, I'd like to open up a location in a different city, probably Waterloo. So I know some people have probably heard of University of Waterloo. We also have a wonderful farming community that just surrounding Waterloo. So I'd like to have those 2 sites and then expand on different days for each of those. What I'm seeing in 5 years, hopefully be able to quit my full-time job and then focus on this. But I mean, if people are interested in kind of the nuts and bolts of the financing, it's difficult. So what I did is I moved some of my own personal money into the company account. And then I applied for, I won a prize for women in entrepreneurship. I competed and did an education program on this and then competed in the pitch competition. So I won a prize for that, which helped me a lot in the first year. Didn't redline in the first year. I got 2 smaller grants. They were $2,500. I don't know the conversion, sorry, which helped us with digital marketing initiatives. So those were specific to marketing online. And then I got another grant for gardening supplies. So buying us our seedlings, our lumber, things like that. Other than that, everything is revenue. So fee for service for the individual, which works out to about $20 an hour per person. And mostly, it's not a great business model. That's my weakest point, which is okay with me, right? And thank goodness for the prize, but it does cover cost of the staffing contract. The staffing ratio is 3 to 1.
Yeah, and I think what you'll see if you looked at the timeline of the different countries that presented for you today, it was all about somewhere between 20 and 30 years in the making.
Yeah.
And so I think you need to give it some time as it develops over there as well.
And start before I'm ready, which is the thing, right? If you're not embarrassed by your product, you're starting too late. That's like my entrepreneurial motto.
That's a very good one.
Population in the cities areas.
Yes.
Mostly, so I'm targeting farmers or their care partners or people who are within a 25-kilometer radius from the farm itself. That's my target population.
Yeah, and then like how
big is that? Like
how many people?
Oh, the population, the target audience is 12,500 people who have dementia. Those are the projections, the provincial projections for people with dementia in that area. So, I mean, of course, a lot of those folks are going to be in the end stages, later stages, and the farm wouldn't make sense for them depending, but that's the rough number I'm working with.
So, Rebecca, unless anyone has another question for Rebecca, I wanted to touch briefly on Wendy Gray, who is also hopped on. She and I touched on, had been in contact before, and when I filled all the slots, I didn't have any more room. But Wendy, do you want to just say a few words about where you're from?
Thank you so much for inviting me to speak for a few moments. I'm from Great Missenden in the Chilterns in Buckinghamshire in England. England has very many individual care farms that operate on their kind of standalone basis. Although there's an organisation called Social Farms and Gardens, most of the care farms operate quite individually. We're based on a working farm, and we have set up a not-for-profit social enterprise on that working farm. We have people most days of the week in small numbers, but we cover kind of every possible spectrum that you could do, just because we opened in 2014, and we just wanted to be available for different sets of the community. We mostly have people with learning difficulties and different levels on the spectrum of autism. And we also have a countryman's club for retired men who may be isolated or have Alzheimer's. But we cover all sorts of things. We have animals because it's a working farm. We do a lot with countryside management, as I'm sure many of the rest of you do as well. that's who we are. We have to apply for grants, for funding. We do. People in this country have personal budgets which they can use to pay for extra kinds of care, such as coming to the farm to be involved. And everybody is becoming increasingly aware of how important that is, as all of you know. I want to hear what everybody else has to say, so I'll leave it at that.
Well, and we are actually coming to the end of our webinar. If only for the accents alone, I would like to keep going, because it's been lovely to hear all the different countries and angles. As I mentioned before, I've been in touch with Care Farm projects starting in many different countries, and I do feel lately like it's a movement. So I'm very happy that Aisling is also coordinating an effort, at least on the European level, to kind of bring up the net and see what all is going on and how we can all work together more to also develop policies on the European level. I really hope everyone enjoyed just getting a little taste of what's going on in different countries in Europe and in Canada. Thank you for that, Rebecca. We are rooting for you, and many of us are willing to share our information when you need it. For everyone here on the call from the Netherlands, there are more webinars the whole week. There's 2 every day, and then on Friday we have our national conference. And I do encourage anyone who hasn't signed up to come, because it will be a lovely party and a very informational and interesting day. If anyone has any last-minute questions, feel free. This webinar will be or is recorded and will be made available later. If there's any slides or anything you would want to have, let us know and we can probably get it for you. I am just checking here. No, it's not bad in the Netherlands as I hear stories from other countries. This is exactly, I've lived in America and I've started Care Farms there. And when I came back, that was my first message to everyone in the Netherlands, that we need to be very grateful for everything we have. But I think that's the way Dutch people get further. They always complain about everything and then try to change it. But anyway, thank you all for your time, and thanks everyone for contributing to the presentations. And yeah, we hope to see the Dutch people later this week, and everyone else we hope to see again in some capacity. Have a good evening.
Likewise, Martha. Thank you
Bye.
for all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.